Mangwana ni mwalelepo fukenjani klikwas dumela vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Mberi. We will be joined by Arrie Hougaard later in the broadcast as he delivers the South Africa report. But prior to that, these are some of the top stories we're looking at. Equatorial Guinea cabinet quits after missing government targets. High IMF debt continues to weigh on African economies. South African unions warn workers against anti-migrant protests. And controversial Zimbabwean businessman Wicknell Chivayo secures role in Kenya airport expansion. And of course, as you know, the World Cup is going on in the USA and Africa continues to make us proud. Here are the African results from last night and this morning. Ghana getting the best of Panama with a late goal. Ghana would have hoped to have dominated that game, but what they ultimately needed was 3 points in the same group with England and Croatia, where England beat Croatia 4-2. So Ghana ready to take it to the next level. And the game of the evening, Portugal failing to win against DR Congo, lower ranked than the Portuguese team, which contains the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Cristiano Ronaldo, the Leopard, as they call themselves, the Leopards of Congo, making sure that the points are split even between the two teams as Africa continues to assert itself at the World Cup. This is Africa. Good morning. We'll be heading into our top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
Now, we start off our top stories with a very interesting development, and some might say it's quite rare across Africa. Equatorial Guinea's cabinet has resigned after failing to achieve its objectives. Vice President Teodoro Nguema Obiang Mangwe announced. Obiang, who is also the son of President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, said the Prime Minister submitted the resignation of all government members because they had only achieved close to 10% of their targets. He did not specify the targets, but a statement from the ruling party said the president found that the government encouraged corruption and failed to diversify the economy. President Obiang has ruled the oil-rich West African country since 1979 and has appointed family members to key positions. The outgoing administration was appointed in 2024, with Manuel Osantsue Nsua serving as Prime Minister. The Vice President said the resignations reflected the principle that responsibility in public management must be matched by results, adding that implementation levels were insufficient compared to commitments made. The ruling Democratic Party of Equatorial Guinea said the president was dissatisfied with the government's management, citing misuse of state resources, stalled development projects, and failure to diversify the economy, particularly agriculture. Of course, it is worth noting, as noteworthy as it is to see a government being told to resign after not meeting its targets, the state of that country should also be subject to the president's actions, considering that he has been in power since 1979. We now move over to our next story, and we are still talking economics, but this time with a little less politics. High reliance on International Monetary Fund debt remains a common feature in some African economies, providing short-term financial stability while creating long-term structural and fiscal challenges when borrowing becomes excessive or prolonged. One immediate consequence is reduced budget flexibility, as countries participating in IMF programs are often required to implement austerity measures, including spending reductions, tax adjustments, and subsidy cuts. Although these policies are intended to restore macroeconomic stability, they can limit investments in healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Recent developments in Senegal have brought attention to these challenges following disclosures of previously unreported debt, which affects access to new IMF funding and raised concerns over fiscal transparency and debt sustainability. Mozambique has also resumed discussions with the IMF on a possible new fund supporter program while continuing to address the impact of earlier hidden debt crises and weak economic recovery. Beyond these cases, IMF programs in Africa may evolve into long-term commitments instead of temporary interventions. While they can help stabilize economies during crises, prolonged dependence may signal weak domestic revenue systems, high debt servicing costs, and vulnerability to external shocks. Now, South Africa's largest labor unions have encouraged workers not to participate in anti-migrant protests and warned that employees who stay away from work to attend demonstrations on June 30 could face consequences. The country remains tense ahead of a deadline issued by anti-immigrant groups demanding that undocumented foreigners leave South Africa following weeks of sometimes violent xenophobic attacks. Four major unions, including the Congress of South African Trade Unions, which represents around 2 million people, said workers would not be protected if they failed to report for duty on June 30. The unions also supported President Cyril Ramaphosa's appeal not to blame migrants for South Africa's difficulties, saying the removal of foreign nationals from workplaces, communities, and public spaces would not reopen factories, repair municipalities, strengthen public healthcare systems, or create sustainable employment. South Africa continues to attract foreign workers because it offers more job opportunities than many African countries, although some politicians have blamed migrants for poverty and crime. Reports indicated clashes in Durban between police and Malawans awaiting repatriation, while Malawi said 10,000 nationals wished to return home from South Africa. And now in the last of our top stories, controversial Zimbabwean businessman Wicknell Chivayo, who has close ties with Kenyan President William Ruto, has secured a stake in the $2.9 billion expansion of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi. Chivayo's company IMC Construction Kenya is part of a consortium led by China Communications Construction Company and its subsidiary China Road and Bridge Corporation. The consortium received the contract through a competitive bidding process after the cancellation earlier in 2026 of a proposed 30-year concession involving Gautam Adani's company amid corruption investigations. The project includes construction of a new passenger terminal and an additional runway at Kenya's busiest airport, which currently handles approximately 8.8 million passengers annually and exceeds its design capacity. The new runway is expected to be completed by 2029 and increase aircraft movements from 14 to 63 per hour. Construction is anticipated to begin this month, with financing expected from Kenya's National Infrastructure Fund and commercial loans backed by future air passenger service charges. The contract award has attracted scrutiny because of Chivayo's relationship with President Ruto and his previous dealings. Just a little context, keep in mind, Wicknell Chivayo meeting President Cyril Ramaphosa was a point of contention when that happened in Zimbabwe at Afrika.MY.NA farm, which belongs to President Emmerson Mnangagwa, particularly because his brothers are facing charges in South Africa. Wicknell Chivayo's company itself was wholly rejected by Namibians with regards to printing Namibia's ballot papers. So across Africa, we are seeing alarms being raised around this character, but of course, the money is certainly louder. This is Africa Good Morning. Shortly, we'll be joined by Arrie Hougaard delivering the South Africa report. All right, throughout the week we've been covering different subjects with regards to South Africa, but here is a man who knows how to make us zone in on only the most important. His name is Arrie Hougaard, starting out with the current affairs from Mzansi.
In current news in South Africa, it's firstly good news. That is for the 8 big city metros in South Africa. And there's funds available, there's money that's been made available, and that is for upgrade infrastructure. So that is good news for the metros. It is the big cities like Cape Town and Durban and Johannesburg, Pretoria, Bloemfontein, Port Elizabeth or Gqeberha. So it's a big area. All the big metros in South Africa will benefit from that. The money coming from the BRICS Bank, they call it. It is the New Development Bank. So it's a new loan of $1 billion that's been made available. That adds up to about 16.2 billion South African rand at the current exchange rate. And it is for the following. It's for the boost of investment. His investment is for water supply, to better the infrastructure related to that. Also sanitation and also electricity supply in all the metros, and also solid waste management. So there's lots of metros that struggle a lot with this, so it's good news for the consumer. So since December, that is December of 2025, South Africa loaned quite a lot of money at the New Development Bank. So at first it was 28 billion South African rand, and now this 16 billion South African rand adds up to 44 billion South African rand that's been loaned from the New Development Bank. And it is also for urban rail corridors that's been improved, that they want to improve in the metros, and also hospital projects that's been assisted. So it's also need to understand that it's a loan, so money needs to be paid back. Lots of money to be paid back monthly. To give an indication, if it's over 10 years at 8%, the loan from the New Development Bank, South Africa need to pay monthly back about 400 million South African rand just to service the 44 billion South African rand loan. So it is quite expensive, but hopefully the infrastructure improvements will make a big difference in the metros. Also, further current news is related to the diamond industry or the mining industry, and the market is under pressure at the moment, and there's a risk at the Cullinan mine in South Africa for 1,700 jobs to be cut or to be lost. And it is the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, that asked the government for government intervention, and that is after the London-listed Pentra Diamonds, they placed the struggling Finch mine under business rescue, and also they launched a retrenchment process that is at the Cullinan mine, where the 1,700 jobs can be lost. And so the the diamond market is down because of particularly the value of the smaller diamonds that went down quite a bit. But the mining industry, a big component of the South African economy, and the overall mining sector in South Africa, they contribute to about 6.1% of the GDP of South Africa. That adds up to about 477 billion South African rand. So it's a big component, and it also gives employment for a huge amount of people in South Africa. It's about 470,000 people that get work in the mining industry in South Africa. To close off current news, also it is South Africa that lost a jazz maestro and also a voice for the oppressed, and that is Abdullah Ibrahim, that passed away unfortunately at the age of 91 in Cape Town. So he's a piano maestro and he also anti-apartheid activist. So it's very sad to see Abdullah Ibrahim passed away. He will be missed, and also condolences to family and friends. So that is current news in South Africa.
He truly was a legendary musician. Now, Arrie, lots happening in the sporting arena. Take us through it.
In sport news in South Africa, we look at soccer and cricket and also rugby. There's national teams playing on the soccer field and also the cricket field and the rugby field. We start with the soccer. It's the Soccer World Cup taking place in America, Canada and Mexico. And there is lots of pressure at the moment on the South African soccer team and the coach Hugo Broos. And that is after South Africa lost the first game against Mexico. They're playing again on Thursday. So they're playing at 6 p.m. That is Namibian time on Thursday. They play against Chechnya. So a very important game for South Africa. They actually need to beat Chechnya and South Korea, both those games, to try and qualify for the next round, the 32 teams going through from the 48 that's playing at the moment. And the next game, or the third game in the league phase, will be next Thursday, the 25th of June, and that will be against South Korea. Also on the cricket field, it's a women's T20 World Cup taking place at the moment in England and Wales. Also not a good start there for the South African women's Proteas team. They lost their first game against Australia. And the challenging news for them is they also need to play now on Sunday, this coming Sunday. They play at 3:30 against India at the same field where they lost against Australia. And the challenge in that game was that it was Australia's 4 spinners that made it difficult for the South African women's team. And India also they've got many good spinning options as well. So that game is being played at Old Trafford. So then again, it is 3:30. That is Sunday afternoon Namibian time. It is South Africa, the women's team, playing in the T20 World Cup, and that will be against India. Also rugby news, and it is big rugby coming up this coming weekend. The Springboks start their year off. That's their first game they're going to play in 2026. They play against the Barbarians team, and that is a combined team. That will be in Gqeberta in the Eastern Cape at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. That kickoff time will be 3 p.m. That is going to be on Saturday. And it is an interesting team that Rassie Erasmus choose. Of course, all the Bulls players can't play in that test. They're playing on Friday. Important final, and that is the final of United Rugby Championship. They play against Leinster, and that is the Bulls in action there and in Ireland, and good luck for them there. So with the Springboks not being able to play, Andre Pollard is playing for the Bulls, and they're still resting Mani Libbok. So Rassie Erasmus decided to pick Quinn Horn as the fly-off. He normally plays fullback for the Lions, so he will play fly-off for the Springboks on Saturday. Also, the South African A team will play against Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe also playing lots more rugby this year at a higher level to prepare for the 2027 World Cup that Zimbabwe qualified to play in Australia next year. It's also an interesting team that the South African A team selected, with the youngsters like Marcus Miller that will also play in that South African A team. So that is a nice rugby coming up over the weekend. So that is sport news in South Africa.
And as always, Arrie, it's time for you to show us the most relevant sights and sounds in South Africa.
Entertainment news in South Africa, we go to Somerset West. That is in the Cape Peninsula, and that's about 45 kilometers from the Cape Town city centre, and it's part of the Helderberg, they call it the Helderberg, Gordons Bay area, and Strand as well. And it is a very beautiful area of Cape Town, and it goes back all the way to 1672, where it's noted that there were people living there already, but the town was founded in 1822, and that is named after Lord Charles Somerset. estate. And so there's lots to do in Somerset West. Many attractions there. Firstly, wine. It's a great wine region as well. Lots of great wine estates. It's Lourensfort, also Longreach and Vergelegen. Firstly, if we look at Lourensfort, it's a very popular wine estate, founded in 1709 already. There you can have great wine, of course, and there you can have Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, great white wines, and also great red wines like Merlot, and also Shiraz and Cabernet Sauvignon. And also you can go there for a quiet afternoon and also eat some great food. There's the Millhouse Kitchen. That's also very popular there, and there's also a weekly market there as well at the Lourensfort estate. Then also there's some festivals also in the Somerset West area. The Helderberg Lights Festival is one of them, and the Strawberry Festival. And then also there's the Nature Reserve. That's the Helderberg Nature Reserve, and it is 363 acres, and it opened in 1964. And also for bird lovers, it's a great place to visit. And there's about 170 species of birds, and specifically the Cape Rock Jumper is one of the birds that's very popular for bird watchers to try and see in the Helderberg Nature Reserve. Also great beaches close to Somerset West. It is Strand and Gordons Bay. That's just a few minutes away from Somerset West. Obviously great accommodation as well. Visitors, people coming in from all over the world visit the area, stay in the popular areas that's close to this ocean. And then also lastly, if you love sport, you love golf as well. And Erenvale Golf Estate is one of the premier golf courses in the Cape Peninsula. Founded in 1995, it hosted several big tournaments like the South African Men's Open as well, and there's also a hotel and a spa that is at Erenvale. So it is Somerset West, a great place to visit when visiting Cape Town.
Many thank you to many thank you to you, Arrie Hougaard, and you, the Africa Good Morning viewers, for joining us through this broadcast on DSTV 285, GoTV 25, OneUp2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. Keep in mind, NTV Africa, Africa spelled with a K, is where you can watch all Africa Good Morning episodes as they come out at your own time. My name is Ashwin Berry. Tomorrow we return with a special focus on Namibia and, of course, some stories from broader Africa. Sweraz Jakanaka as we leave you with economic indicators.